Hey everybody,
I'm Josh.
and I'm Eitan. Welcome back to the fifth episode of the Younger Half podcast. We are two 14-year-old boys from New Jersey who discuss, debate, and share insights on everything from history to politics, sports, current events, and more. Our goal is to provide an outspoken voice for the kids of our generation, as well as to voice our passionate and informative opinions on our current times. Follow us on Instagram at the Younger Half. To see more of our podcasts, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts at the Younger Half. All right, let's get started.
So as cases surge nationwide, a big question that everyone is asking is will and should schools reopen? So President Trump has said a lot of times that he wants schools to open, and it's just been a hotly debated question. So
It's summer vacation. Why is everyone worried about school? Come on. No,
mainly because we haven't been in school for what, like 5 months now.
yeah, it's been a while. But no, I think it's very dangerous to open schools because we're, they say, I've heard so many statistics that put young people, and the president has repeatedly said, oh, young people are safe in school. But they're the teachers and they're the principals who could
and
have
also and
health
also
conditions.
sorry to cut you off, but not necessarily the people in the school, but you come home and give it to your parents, or just you go and talk to someone and stuff like that.
Right. So like people, I don't know, what it seems that President Trump is saying is that we need to like reopen everything. But he has to acknowledge that it's too early. It's not
I mean,
safe, you know? What do you think?
what I think is that, it's never going to be fully safe until there's a vaccine. And nobody knows when that's gonna happen. So I feel like my thoughts on it is that we can't just be like at 10% capacity to everything for the next year, or I don't know, however long it is. Or you know what I'm saying? Like I acknowledge that it's not going to be the safest thing, but when you do it with protocols and with precautions and social distancing and everything like that, and what you said before was about the teachers. So for, I don't know, this isn't an ideal situation, but an elderly teacher or anybody who's, I don't know, whatever, any age, and plus anybody who's in a risk factor zone would, why can't you have a like some college kid or somebody looking for a job, proctor the class and have the teacher zoom in. I mean, odds are there are going to be students zooming in here and there in the classes that the parents don't want to send them to school. Odds are that's going to happen, so why can't it be vice versa that the teachers do that?
Right, but the teachers say they need that interaction. I know you're talking about college, but third graders, the teacher, I don't know for sure, but even Zoom was hard for third, first, and second graders. And like, how can they go back into the classroom and not
I
have their teacher there?
I
And
100% acknowledge that, but so then you're suggesting that we don't open school at all because they're not going to have the perfect experience?
well, maybe open it for people who can do that. But it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of things
It's
that
vice
go into
versa.
it.
If anything, it's vice versa. Why would you have the younger kids where their parents need to watch them and everything like that, or need to work?
Right,
Why would you
that's
have
the
it that way?
question. Exactly, you're saying, and that's using that against you because you said, "Oh, let's have it 10%," but then
I didn't
you
say that. I
can't
said I
do.
said we can't have it 10% till there's a vaccine. What I was suggesting in the beginning was that we can't just stay in quarantine till there's a vaccine. It's not going to be able to happen.
Well, it needed to happen. I heard that the CDC said, or the World Health Organization said that if the whole world quarantined for 2 to 4 weeks, like everyone in the entire world, and no one went out, then everything would be like dramatically lower. Obviously,
I know,
that's
but
impossible,
you
but
can't have a quarantine period for a year where the economy would be terrible and just have nothing to
is
do
it
for a
worth the
year.
lives? Is it worth the dead children, the dead parents,
I
and the
didn't
dead
say that
teachers?
I didn't say that we reopen with no social distancing, no mask, and nothing like that. That's not what I was suggesting. That's there's being reckless and there's being careful in opening.
You can't be careful when the like 3 or 4, 5, whatever 6-year-olds want to run around and hug their friends who they haven't seen in over, as you said, 5 or 6 months, whatever.
I know
It's
that,
just
but
it's very hard
what
to
you're
do this.
suggesting is that we stay in quarantine for another 6 months and the economy continues to go
And what you're
downhill.
saying is that the economy should succeed for our lot
I
instead
didn't
of
say
us being
otherwise.
safe.
I said we open with protocols and with social distancing and stuff like
Well,
that.
it clearly doesn't work because we were like praising Florida for doing an amazing job, and then just now, and even nationwide, their cases are going up. We really thought that like Florida and everyone was going like, oh, like they can reopen well, but now
I don't know. I'm just saying that I still hold by my previous statement that we can't just stay in quarantine for another 6 months. It's not gonna happen either way. Like I just don't think that that's a logical thing to stay.
I don't know. It's very risky.
I
That's
acknowledge
all.
that, but what I'm just saying is that if we reopen with carefully and with precautions, it's better than to stay in quarantine for 6 months or until who even knows until vaccine come out.
Right. All right. And the next thing we want to talk about is as protests and riots still rage in the US, the questions have been and are rising about whether we should or should not defund the police. So, what do you think about that?
I think that that is incredibly logical thing to state because as we've seen is that there's past couple of months, not really months, past couple of weeks have been very tough on major cities throughout the U.S. In New York City, burglaries are up 118%. I don't remember if it was Portland or Chicago. I think I could be wrong with this statistic, but I'm estimating as I think I heard like homicides were up around like 92% in one of those cities. Like the number of people murdered in New York City was up 30%. So I don't understand if the police right now are having a difficult time stopping crime, then how are they gonna do better when they have no funds or have social workers try to stop the criminals?
Right. So, what do you think? It's a very complicated question if we should defund the police or even abolish the police. So, I don't know.
I don't
What
think
are
it's
you
complicated at all.
saying?
I
You
think
think
that
we
the police
should
should have
defund?
no. I strongly believe that police should continue with the funds that they have now.
No, but if we defunded the police, they get, I think it's almost triple as much money invested into the police than it is to any other issues. The
Because
like
look
you're
what's
ta-
happening now with the police. Imagine what would happen without the police. Take that in for a second. 93% crime, 93% homicide went up in Chicago or Portland. With police. Imagine what would happen without the police. Just think about that for a second.
So what are you saying? Are you saying defund it or abolish it? Because those are very different things.
Neither. It with I think that by defunding the police, you're almost abolishing it. How could somebody do their job sufficiently without the proper funds?
But you don't even need to defund it completely. They're getting over, I don't know, about hundreds of billions of dollars funded into the police system when
To
into
do their
schools it's
job, to
much.
protect you. Who are you gonna call when God forbid somebody breaks into your home? You're gonna call the guy who's going to politely ask the person to leave the house.
Right, but if you, I don't know, you can defund the police. You can defund the police, but it doesn't mean, oh, buy police. I'm simply saying
I
that you
think in
can
a
put
way it
less money
does.
into the police and they can do the exact same job they're doing with putting more money into homeless shelters and building a better education. And
Incorrect. How would one?
how is that incorrect? Tell me right now.
Because by cutting the police's funds, you are cutting their ability to do their job. If they don't have the proper
I'm
equipment,
not saying put it to zero.
okay, let's say. So what are you suggesting then?
That we defund. I don't.
Defund means to like take away their funds, Eitan.
Right. So I actually agree with you on that. I don't think I was wrong. You shouldn't defund the police. I think we should definitely cut the amount of money that is put into the police because it just. You're right. Like defund, we don't need to
Yeah.
like completely take away the funds.
What you have
But
to do is you
definitely
have to
cut it.
put yourself in your statement. So by God forbid again, somebody breaks into your house, who you're gonna call? The guy who's gonna come and beat him up with his broom. You know what I mean? So for people suggesting that we defund the police completely, just think about that for a moment.
Right, but the most listen to this. Most of NYPD's budget is funded by the city's taxpayer dollars, 92%, or $5.2 billion.
To do their job sufficiently.
But how? As you said, how are they doing it sufficiently if you just said crime is up, crime is up?
That's my
What's
point. Is
happening?
imagine now.
What's your point?
My point is that now you see that crime is up, correct? That they're having a
Yes.
tough time doing their job now. So now imagine
Why? They're getting the full funds, and that doesn't prevent them. They should be stopping everything. Why is
you cannot expect the police to stop all crime. That's an illogical thing to state. First of all,
yeah, but I'm saying, why is it up
there
compared to
is such
last
thing.
year?
Second of all, there is such thing as a crime surge, and especially at the points now where police are basically like hated throughout the country. Now is a different situation. And second of all, now imagine now that they're having a tough time. This is my point. Now imagine now that they're having a tough time doing their job. So then imagine when you cut their budget by 30%, the difficulty they're gonna have doing their job.
Right, but they're getting the same amount they did last year, and last year was down 118%. So I don't know, with their budgeting, you think just the pressure?
What do you mean by pressure?
Because now everyone's calling on them for defund the police. You said
I think there are multiple factors, and just we've seen that like 500 NYPD officers have filed for retirement. Like the NYPD's had to ask people to hold off retirement because one of the reasons is because they're getting like hated basically throughout the country. So I think that's one part of it. I think it's incorporated with all the other racist events that's been going on, which has sparked these hatred for the police.
Right.
But in the end, I still think that we should not be defunding the police. On to the next topic. As we reach the coming elections, one question that people are asking is that should the national voting age be lowered to 16? What do you think?
Well, I think that it really, I don't know, I think it is okay to do that because there are several states like Michigan, for example, who allow people to drive. Even there's some states that allow people to drive at 14. So
I don't think that's true. Fact check alert. I don't think that's true.
I think it's 16.
I think the earliest is like 15 and a half. I think that's false.
Oh yeah, 15. To drive US. Edit that. Yeah. You can obtain learner's permit in Alaska, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota at just 14 years old.
Wow, okay, so I was wrong.
So, well, I think that I don't know your argument about why they shouldn't, but I assume it has to do with responsibility. Is that correct? Well, I was thinking that, if we give them responsibility to drive a car, and what I've heard a lot from people that said, oh, they shouldn't be voting at 16 because they're not responsible enough or they don't understand it enough. But I don't think that's true because you have to give the younger people a say, and you have to put faith in them to make their own decisions. You have to say that they're responsible enough and they.
Sorry, yeah, keep going.
No, you go.
A few things. First of all, I think that is a huge, I don't know what the word is, assumption or trust into teenagers who largely are uneducated about the elections. Another thing is that what you said about driving.
Well, then they won't vote.
That's not true. Not true. Their friend will say, "Oh yeah, I heard that President Trump is a great leader." He'll, "Oh yeah, I'm a Republican now." I think though that driving and having a say in our country are two not related things. Those are two incredibly different, not related things, and two drastic changes.
Well, that's why I said I hear you arguing from a different point, but I'm saying if you were saying that, oh, they're not responsible and we shouldn't put trust in them to make good decisions. If you put trust in them to make these to make these decisions, you have to. Yeah, it's true. You have to put trust in them.
So I don't know. I just feel that as though to put trust into a 16-year-old to have a say in our country is very different than trusting them on the highway.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But like, I don't know. I don't know. But even 18-year-olds can be uneducated.
I
Those
understand,
2 years don't make. I don't know.
but 18, you're an official adult. It's different. I don't know.
Well, you have a title. It's not like,
Yeah,
oh,
I got you. I got you. Right.
you're adult.
I feel like as though it's good how it is now. I feel like there's no point in changing it. Um,
Yeah, I
on the
see that.
topic of
I
elections,
agree.
I know we've had our differences in the past about President Trump, but just to clarify, what are your like official thoughts on President Donald Trump?
Well, I think that it's so hard for him to admit that he has done something wrong.
But so what? What does that
Le-
have to do with his presidency?
Because he doesn't want to admit that the cases are on the rise. Last
But,
Sunday in an
but
interview with
that's not the question. The question is just your general feelings about President Trump.
So I think that he's not a leader and he hasn't led us. And the way to prove that is because of this
Exactly.
current
That's a
pandemic.
proof, right? So my thoughts on him are
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I agree a lot with his policies, with the stuff he does, his relations with Israel, I agree with a lot of the stuff that he does. Um, a lot of his policies, his a lot of his conservative Republican um values, I guess I'll say, which I am in favor of. Um, but there to me he does lack like a lot of like leader qualities and just a lot of the values that he's like
What values?
and morals that he stands for are not really for me, so I don't know, remember earlier like in the debates there's a whole thing about like his like locker room talk, like that, all that stuff, that part of him is not for me, the list goes on, like the
Yeah,
social
but
media, but
if you're I'm sorry to cut you off, but if you're electing someone to be president, you should be like,
that,
oh yeah, I
right, right.
like his
So
relationship with Israel or with the Middle East or with like
that's my
one or two
that's my
policies,
point.
but
So
he's going around and touching women and doing
that's my
inappropriate
point.
things that are
So
completely
yeah,
illegal.
yeah, yeah.
It's ridiculous
So
to support him. How
that's
can you support him?
that's let me finish. So that was my saying, is that I agree a lot with his policies, like I said before, but just the values and morals that he stands for are not for me, which is why if I were to vote, he wouldn't earn my vote, but I wouldn't classify as an anti like Trump. Like I would say like I'm in favor of his political stuff, but not, the stuff outside of his policies.
If you could vote, would you vote for him?
I don't think I could bring myself to do that.
Would you vote at all?
This year, no, or the year or the previous election. Yeah, and that is the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Follow us on Instagram at the Younger Half to see more of our podcasts. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts at the Younger Half. Thanks so much. Have a great day.